Today, we take a look at some bands that mention other musicians in their lyrics. Let's check it. Yes, I'm back, and we're just going to get right into it. This is kind of an ambiguous countdown, kind of a weird one for my first time back in like months. 2020 and part of 2021 was devastating for a lot of us and a lot of reasons. Anyway, throughout the years, there have been plenty of bands that have went meta and kind of named other musicians and artists in their own song lyrics. Be it an homage or a nod to influence, or in some cases straight up dissing, which is mostly in rap. The list can literally go on to the hundreds to the amount of times as this has happened. Funny enough though, in the punk and pop punk world, this is also the case. With dozens of songs to choose from, maybe hundreds of songs to choose from, I narrowed it down to my favorite 10, which we'll be looking at today. First up is the Ramones' Do You Remember Rock and Roll Radio? 1980s end of the century album by the Ramones released one of their most infamous songs, Do You Remember Rock and Roll Radio? The fast, upbeat punk rock song is a short number that calls back to many radio disc jockeys and a lot of musicians of the time. From Murray the K, the New York City disc jockey from the 1950s to the 1970s, during all of Beatlemania, and Alan Freed, who in 1986 was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. To the shout-outs to Old Multi, drummer of the garage punk band The Barbarians, Jerry Lee Lewis, and even John Lennon himself from the Beatles. In 1977, punk song White Man from the Clash's self-titled album names a number of Jamaican artists, including vocalists Delroy Wilson, Ken Booth, and Leroy Smart. This song is a personal song about a time that lead singer Joe Strummer went to a reggae all-nighter and wasn't very impressed with the previously named performers. And apparently was also called out at the show for being the only white boy there. Hence the title, White Man. The band contemplated on recording it because they didn't want a lot of backlash from the African American community, but they ended up doing it anyway, and it ended up paying off. Because it's still one of the band's most popular songs, including apparently Joe Strummer's favorite Clash song to write of all time, and even being played at the great late punk rocker's funeral. 1996 brought us the second album from the rock band Weezer, Pinkerton. On the album was track 7's El Scorcho, which is also the first single from the record. Though the track failed commercially completely everywhere. Several radio stations refused to play it, and MTV refused to play the video altogether. Which all of that is considered to be the reason why the album failed commercially. The song mentions fellow punk rockers Green Day. In the lyrics, I asked you to go to the Green Day show and you said you never heard of them. And live, when they've played the song live, the band has been changed to everybody from the Foo Fighters, Panic at the Disco, and Lollapalooza was changed to the Pixies. The song also mentions, though not directly related to musicians, Johnny Grunge leg dropping New Jack through a press table, which is a reference to New Jack and Johnny Grunge from ECW, the Extreme Championship Wrestling Corporation, from the 90s to the 2000s. I only mention this because I'm a huge wrestling fan. ECW legend New Jack sadly passed away. RIP to one of the most hardcore legends of all time. Indie punk rocker Frank Turner's 2011 album England Keeps My Bones makes a quick mention to Bob Dylan and Ernest Hemingway in the line, posters of Dylan and Hemingway, an antique compass of a sailor's escape, referring to the posters on the wall of the girl in the song named Amy. Go listen to the song, it's rad if you're into that folk indie type music. The Fall Out Boy has changed their sound. Their nods to rock and influences are still evident, like in the 2017 track Young and Menace from their 7th studio album Mania. There are two quick lyrical nods in this song, what first of all being of Motley Crue bassist Nikki Sixx with the lyric, Kill me twice like Nikki Sixx, a nod to Nikki Sixx's addiction to heroin and his accidental overdose, where he was declared dead for 2 minutes on December 23rd, 1987, but was revived by paramedics and soon after wrote the song Kickstart My Heart. Another lyrical nod, I guess it can be interpreted as this, is in the choruses of Menace, with the lyrics, Oops, I Did It Again, which sounds like a nod to Britney Spears' single, Oops, I Did It Again. 1997 brought us Blink-182's iconic album, Dude Ranch, which is considered a breakthrough album for the band, jumping from an independent label to MCA Records, which is a major label. Being the 4th single from the album, Josie includes references to bands Unwritten Law and Dance Hall Crashers, two bands in which the trio toured with between the years of 1995 and 1996, before Dude Ranch came out. The song talks about an idealistic girlfriend who tolerates the protagonist's childish nature and shares the same taste in music, food, and their sense of humor kind of too. The musical reference I'm talking about is the line, "Yeah, my girlfriend loves UL and DHC," abbreviations for Unwritten Law and Dance Hall Crashers, respectively. Sum 41's breakthrough single Fat Lip on their 2001 album A Killer No Filler was pretty much everywhere on the radio at the time. You couldn't go into the mall or turn the radio or turn MTV or any radio station on without seeing the video or hearing the song somewhere. Given the diverse musical background and upbringings from the members of Sum 41, which can definitely be seen in latter albums with guitar solos, as well as even in Fat Lip and almost Beastie Boys type fill, the band actually pays homage to their heavy metal heroes. With the line, "Heavy metal and mullets were how we were raised, Maiden and Priest were the gods that we praise," a line mentioning Iron Maiden and Judas Priest. Funny enough, a couple years later, the band went on to play a medley of songs at the MTV 20th anniversary show, which included a medley of tunes from their Self, Motley Crue, the Beastie Boys, and of course Judas Priest, featuring Motley Crue drummer Tommy Lee and lead singer Rob Halford of Judas Priest. If you haven't seen the medley, go check it out. I'll link it below. Simple Plan made a quick nod to a number of influences in their track Grow Up from the band's debut studio album No Pads, No Helmets, Just Balls. The song is actually a bonus track on the record, but it was used in a number of movies and commercials, and the band plays it live. They make a mention to the band's Good Charlotte, Sum 41, MXPX, and Blink-182 right at the beginning of the song with the lyrics GC Summon Blink and MXPX Rocking My Room. 2 out of 4 of the bands mentioned were actually featured on the album, which include Mark Hoppus from Blink-182 in the single I'd Do Anything, actually one of Simple Plan's singles from the record, as well as Joel Madden of Good Charlotte on the song You Don't Mean Anything. The band also toured with several of the bands mentioned, including a supporting act of Blink-182 on the infamous Pop Disaster Tour in the year 2001 on some of the dates, as well as touring Australia and New Zealand with Good Charlotte, and then in 2004 co-headlined a US tour with MXPX. If you've existed as a human being within the last 20 years, you've definitely heard of the song 1985 by Bowling for Soup from their 2004 album A Hangover You Don't Deserve. And they mention everyone from U2 to Blondie to Limp Bizkit and Nirvana. The song is about a middle-aged housewife who lived the glorious years of the 80s, and now her kids think she's lame, but she was actually pretty awesome in the past, and she really can't show that. With references even to movies in the 80s like Pretty in Pink, and the mention to the Whitesnake video where a girl shakes her ass. The song and video are literally littered with a ton of homages. The video alone is a tribute to the 80s, with the bands dressing up like members from Motley Crue to George Michael's. But of course, we have to mention all of the musical mentions. We got Whitesnake, of course, as mentioned, shaking her ass on Whitesnake's car. And in the chorus, we got... Hold on a sec. There's a bunch, so... Since Bruce Springsteen, Madonna, way before Nirvana, there was U2 and Blondie, and music still on MTV. Her 2 kids in high school, they tell her that she's uncool, but she's still preoccupied with 1985. Yeah, I might as well have just played it. Moving on, and then in the second verse, also a mention of who the hell is the other guy who was singing in Van Halen. How she doesn't like Limp Bizkit, and at one point she thought she'd maybe hook up with a member of Duran Duran. There's a YouTuber by the name of Phantom Sage who went on and updated it to the 2005 rather than 1985 version, because it's hard to think that in 2004, 1985 was 19 years ago. And now in 2021, 2002, which was the height of the pop-punk explosion, was the same amount of years apart. I know it's simple math, but it's still hard to believe sometimes. Anyone who grew up during that time, we're all fucking old. Number 1, this one is kind of a tie and a hard one for me to choose because I didn't know which song to talk about from this band, because there are so many songs where they reference other musicians and other song titles and other album titles and homages and stuff. And I'm talking about the band NOFX. From writing entire songs about people and paying homage to the late great Tony Sly of No Use for a Name and an entire song about him, to dropping subtle band members' names in songs like in Mattersville saying Davey Havok's house is painted black, a nod to Davey Havok of AFI. And a mention to My Chemical Romance and The Misfits, depending on what version of the song you're listening to, in the song What's the Matter with Parents These Days? But on to the 2 tied songs. I definitely have to say 13 Stitches from the band's 2003 album The War on Errorism, or One Jealous Again from the band's 2013 self-entitled album. With 13 Stitches, it's about bands mentioned during a show that Fat Mike went to and cracked his head off a pole and had to go to the hospital and get 13 stitches in his head. And a lot of the bands that were at the show are mentioned in the song. And with Jealous Again Again, it's about Fat Mike's divorce and his love for his album and record collection, with said albums being cleverly hidden as lyrics in the song. I ended up choosing 13 Stitches because one, Jealous Again Again is basically one entire homage to all of that. Every single line is the name of an album or the name of a band. So go listen to that. I will also link that below. Anyway, 13 Stitches immediately starts off by talking about punk rock band The Descendants and mentioning the LA punk trio, the Alley Cats. The song jumps back to talking about the Descendants song Kabuki Girl from their 1982 album Milo Goes to College, even mentioning 1980s disc jockey Rodney on the Rock. The song then mentions seeing DOA and Millions of Dead Cops at the famous Whiskey in LA, and talks about Joey Shithead of DOA, who funny enough was elected to the City Council of Burbanksy, British Columbia in 2018 as a member of the Burnaby Green Party. The dude's a politician now. Anyway, it goes on to mention John Macias from the punk band Circle One, and last mentions DRI, abbreviation for Dirty Rotten Imbeciles, in the latter verses, as well as punk band Irrepublic before he takes a hit to the head and has to go to the hospital and get 13 stitches. That was a mouthful, but there's a lot going on in there. So that was it. Please check out all these songs and let me know if there are any bands that I missed that had like subtle nod and mentions. There's like a ton of them. I found a list online with literally like 200 bands, artists, rappers. There's a lot of rappers on there that have a lot of diss tracks about other artists. But let me know below if there's any of your favorites and anything that I missed out. And above all else, guys, we're going to roll the outro. Stay pop punk. Later.